in the second part of the tutorial, I want to find out which is the product mix that, in my example, maximizes the margin. Now, that could be like maximizing revenue or minimizing cost of goods, but in our example, we will choose to maximize the margin, which is the gross profits. Because of that, I have erased the quantities that I used as test data for the first part, so my spreadsheet produces zeros everywhere that there's a formula that calculates, and I will have Excel finding this for me. Now, in order for Excel to perform something like that, it requires a tool called Solver that is not available in the default installation of Excel, so I press the Office button here, and I choose Excel Options, and then I choose the add-ins at the menu here, and in here you see Excel add-ins. I press Go, and I make sure that the Solver add-in is selected. I press OK, and in the Data toolbar, I observe that the new button has appeared, which is the Solver button. Now, if I click on that, I have the dialog for this tool that's appropriate for this kind of calculations. So what I need to do is maximize the margins. So actually, I select this here and I select the margin. Maybe Excel has guessed that correctly, maybe not, so always check. And I want to maximize the margin by actually changing the quantities, so by changing which cells. So again, Excel might have guessed that properly, but I want to make sure so that I have selected the correct range. So I select it myself, and then in our case, I want to maximize the target cell, which is the margin, by changing those cells. In another model, I might want to minimize, let's say, costs, or set them to a particular value based on my corporate goals. Now, because Excel does not understand really that these are quantities of products, and these are raw materials, and these are euros, and so on and so forth, if I let this model run like this, Excel obviously will tell me what will maximize your margin will be an infinite production of products that will give you actually an infinite margin. But that's not down to earth. And it's not down to earth because I cannot really produce an infinite amount of products given that I have a limited amount of inventory on hand. So I can produce as many products as my inventory lets me produce, and I cannot use more raw materials than what I have on hand. So I need to put some constraints, and this is the area for constraints, that would actually both put this model down to earth, but also at the same time I might put some constraints that have to do with marketing. So let's see both those cases. Click Add to add a new constraint, and the first thing that I decide is that my inventory used should always be smaller than the inventory I have, smaller than or equal, on hand. Ideally, my inventory used to be actually the same with inventory on hand. That would be the ideal. But I'm asking Excel to give me a solution based on this constraint, and then I press Add to add another constraint, and the next constraint I add is that the quantities have to be integer numbers. And why is that? Well, that's because I cannot really produce 1.5 bottles of nose spray, or you can't really go at the drugstore and say I want 1/3 of nasal drops. You get to get a fixed quantity in terms of bottle of so many milligrams. So because Excel doesn't know that these things are integers, I have to tell Excel. And then last but not least, can put another constraint that might be marketing constraint. For example, Excel down to earth constraint would be these quantities have to be positive, because Excel might find out that, for example, nasal drops for children are not giving me a profit. Maybe they will actually giving me a loss, but I have to produce them because I want to satisfy parents that they have a product to buy for the children. Or in this case, Excel might actually produce negative amounts of nose drops for children, which wouldn't be a good idea because I cannot really produce negative products. On the other hand, I might want to have a certain quantity in the market. So maybe it's a good idea for this model, based on what my company wants to do, that the quantities would be at least greater than or equal to 950. So I produce from all product lines at least 950 units, so they are available in the market. Then I press OK, and I have those constraints here. And then what I need to do is just solve the model. And by solving the model, I have a solver found solution here, and I select the answer report. The other reports are not available for this particular model, and I press OK so that I keep the current values. Now you see the quantities are 951, 752, and then 950 again, 951. So maybe that product and that product are producing, well, are depicted to produce 950 units, because I had the constraint, the marketing plus down to earth constraint of minimum quantities of 950. Also observe something else. Here, down here, you have an answer report, another spreadsheet called answer report 1 that was not there before. So if I click on it, I will see that Excel has created a report based on what it has done. Now the first part of the report basically tells us what the original values were and how those values changed based on the results that the solver found. Now what is quite interesting here to see is that I have in this particular raw material, the disodium edetate, I guess I'm not pronouncing the name very well, a slack of 1,907 210 units, and then also I have sodium phosphate in excess of like 163 650 units left over. Let's go back to our model to see that. You see, for these products, see, I did not manage, from those three products, I did not manage to actually exhaust the inventory on hand, which basically means that I'm buying more raw materials for those three than what I will use for producing the product mix that will maximize the margin. So that basically means that I don't have a very good inventory management, because I buy more than what the optimum quantity is in those three raw materials. Storing and storage costs money, while instead of buying more from those, maybe I would have, if I would have increased the purified water and had less than those, given like more money here and less money there, I might have a bigger margin, being able to produce more products without the limitation of the purified water I have. So basically in an answer report like this, you are looking for this column is probably the most important one, to see which are the ones that are producing slack, and the ones that produce so much slack, like those free products here, raw materials, so here, indicate a problematic area in my decision making. So Solver is a fantastic tool for managers, because actually it gives you an idea of what the data says in a very, very fast and convenient and easy way. Thank you for attending the second part of the tutorial.